4 May 1980, 210, 2 local, South Atlantic 50, 2 degrees south. A pair of gray shapes knifes through ragged cloud at 150 feet above the ocean, salt spray streaking their bellies. The altimeter needles on both cockpits hover just above zero. Nigh on metroways, the lead pilot mutters. Not 1 meter higher. If they climb, they die. If they turn back, the fleet survives. There is no way back now. Teniente Fragata Carlos Puma Valdez, Argentine Naval Aviation, tightens his gloved hand on the control stick of his Super Etendards. To his right and slightly behind, Teniente Marcelo Lince Álvarez keeps close formation, a shadow against the leaden sea. Under each of their left wings hangs one long, shark-nosed weapon, a 39 Exocet sea-skimming active radar 165-kilogram warhead. They only have 5 of these missiles in the entire country. Today, they've brought 2. Distance to estimated contact point, 40 nautical miles, Lince calls. His voice is flat, measured. Puma hears the strain around the edges. Copy, stay low. Agave is cold until we're in position. Puma answers. The Agave radar in his nose is their only way to find the British warships, but every second it transmits, it's shouting their position into the sky. Their fuel gauges creep down. They've got 1 pop-up, 1 radar sweep, 1 salvo. Then they must turn home, with just enough fuel to make it back across the icy emptiness to Rio Grande. He flicks his eyes to the weapon panel. The Exocet icon glows amber, safe, unarmed. He rests his thumb on the switch that will change that. Behind the mirrored visor, Puma blinks sweat away. Outside, the ocean throws white teeth at them, but the 2 jets hold at about 45 meters above the waves, ripping a white line of spray. Over the horizon, unseen, the target group rolls and pitches in the same gray sea, guarding the British carriers. Somewhere in that group is a thin, angular silhouette named HMS Sheffield. 2 hours earlier, 400 local, Rio Grande Naval Air Base, Tierra del Fuego. The hangar smells of kerosene and damp concrete. A Super Etendards sits in the shadows like an animal in a cage, refuel truck hose still attached. Puma stands in front of the map board with a mug of coffee cooling in his hand. His squadron commander, Captain de Corbetta Rivas, taps the chart. Neptune reports a radar return here, 50, 2 south, 50, 7 west. Large radar signature, multiple ships. That's not a picket, that's a task group. On the acetate overlay, grease pencil rings fan out from a small cross. The outer ring is labeled Sea Harrier cap. The innermost, estimated missile launch window. We come in here, Rivas says. At 150 feet, I gave off. 130 will give you fuel at Point Bravo, then get out. Once the tanker leaves, you are on your own. No more radio. Puma studies the lines. The distance from the coast to the launch window says 350 nautical miles. Super Etendards internal fuel, even nudged by the tanker, gives him a narrow envelope. He tastes the constraint like metal on his tongue. Fuel window, one of the hard limits you can't charm or bluff. You'll have 10, maybe 12 minutes on station, Rivas continues. No circling, you pop up, sweep once, maybe twice, fire, then down low and home. Neptune will keep track of the group as long as she can, but she's old. If her radar dies, the unspoken hangs in the air. If Neptune blinks, they'll be out here blind. Lince stands beside Puma, arms folded. How many missiles operational, he asks. Rivas holds up his hand and touches thumb to ring finger. 2 ready today, these 2. He nods to the jets outside. We all know the numbers. We do not waste them. Puma's eyes rest on the drawn British carrier outline on the board. The enemy that launched the task force after Argentina seized the islands. That's the strategic picture. But today is much smaller. 2 jets, 2 missiles, 1 shot. Any changes to rules? He asks. Rivas shrugs. The fleet is the priority. If you see escorts instead of the carrier, you sink what you can. He locks eyes with Puma. We are not hunting a specific ship. We are hunting a hole in their air defense cover. Puma nods. His heart ticks faster. A hole, an opening. He walks to his jet as dawn turns the sky a faint iron blue. The missile under his wing glistens with dew. At 30, 9 serial number hand chalked by a mechanic. He runs gloved fingers along it, feeling the cold metal, the panel seams, the seeker dome. Hoist, one of the ground crew murmurs, today's the day. Puma isn't superstitious, not normally. But as he pulls the ladder and swings into the cockpit, he touches the photo taped beside his altimeter. His wife, their infant son, the kid's hair a fuzzy halo. He snaps the oxygen mask on, his world shrinking to dials, switches, and panels. Outside, the ground marshal signals. Engines spool up, a rising whine that drowns the base paw announcements. He hears Lince on the radio, Das Listo, 2 ready. Puma flips to the weapons page on his console. Exocet status, B, armed indicator dark. He feels the weight of that switch. Once it's armed, they are committed. Over the South Atlantic, 930, the 130 Hercules tanker is a dark blot against the high clouds. Puma and Lince plug into the drogue baskets, their thin probes sliding into the swirling cones. The tanker holds at 18.0 feet, air cold and thin. Puma feels the delicate taste of the basket through the stick, every buffet and swirl. "You boys are thirsty today," the tanker pilot jokes over secure voice. "We plan to work hard," Puma replies. Fuel numbers creep up, they need every kilogram. Crosswinds tug at the formation. Bingo fuel computed, his navigation system says in mechanical English. The number flashes on the EUD, that's the hard turn. Backline, he knows they are going to fly past it. A voice crackles on UV, slightly distorted. Neptune to strike, large group still present, multiple returns, bearing 60, range 70 miles from your present position, speed 5 knots, good target. The P-2 Neptune, older than Puma himself, is to the northwest, tiptoeing along radar range, its antiquated search set punching sweeps into the gloom. Puma pictures the decrepit aircraft, crew hunched over glowing scopes. Their radar is a constraint too. Old vacuum tubes, cracked wiring, it can fail at any moment. Understood, Neptune, Puma says. We proceed. Maintain silence after this call. The tanker disconnect light blinks. Puma eases out of the basket. Lince follows, the 130 banks away, headed back to the mainland. Suddenly, they are alone. Descent to 200 feet, Puma orders, heading 60, speed 450 knots. I gave off, they drop, the altimeter unwinding as the ocean rises up to meet them. Light flickers across the canopy as they punch through cloud. The world compresses into a strip of gray water and instruments. On the other side of the horizon, AM Sheffield plows through the swell. Same time, 930, Ops Room, AM Sheffield. The operations room is dim, only the offshore swell occasionally nudging the fluorescent tubes. Air smells of coffee, paint, and recycled breath. Commander Ian Hartley, captain of AM Sheffield, stands at the back of the dark, windowless space. The glowing plots throw green and orange patches on his face. Ahead of him, the radar repeaters show the tactical picture. Type 960, 5 air search radar casts its long, range sweeps in a slow, rotating brush, its returns damped down to avoid clutter. Type 990, 2 overlays surface targets in tighter, faster pulses. Around them, in the gray sea, are the other brightest ships. Sheffield is positioned about 18 miles away from the carriers, Hermes and Invincible, picket duty. Radar guard, their job is to see what the carriers cannot. Current cap status, Hartley asks, his voice even. Lieutenant Commander David Duke Morgan, the principal warfare officer, looks up from his console. Viking 1 flight of Sea Harriers on cap, 80 miles to the northeast. They are turning down to head back to Hermes at the moment. Relief cap launching in 20, so there's a gap. Neptune appears on their trackers as a weak, far-off contact too. They know the Argentines have maritime patrol aircraft. Hartley listens as the warfare officer continues. EM cone level is yellow, sir. We're still in reduced emissions. Task Group doesn't want to give away its exact position too long. Range Argentine sensors, that's another constraint. To stay hidden, they are half blind. Hartley nods, understood. Keep the 960, 5 at reduced power, but leave it on. If they come, ID like a little warning. He glances at the status board. See Dart missile system shows ready. Fire control radars type 909 are in B, chaff launchers loaded. He's not entirely comfortable with the EM cone posture, but above him in the task group hierarchy, someone else has weighed the risk. He can ask, he can suggest, he can't unilaterally bring the ship to full battle stations without cause. Any sign of enemy aircraft, he asks. Negative, sir, Morgan replies. Just the odd echo, probably weather. If they are out there, they are hugging the deck. Morgan knows the math. Radar horizon at Sheffield's antenna height, roughly 20 meters above the waterline. The radar's geometric horizon for a low-flying aircraft at 50 meters is roughly 25 to 30 nautical miles. Beyond that, the Earth itself hides them. Puma's Super Etendards, 40 miles away at 45 meters altitude, is still invisible behind that curve. On Sheffield's starboard side, sailors recoil hoses, paint-chipped railings, and check lashings. Normal, slightly bored routine. In the ops room, someone yawns just out of Hartley's view. 938, 40 miles southwest of Sheffield. At 150 feet, the South Atlantic is a wall of gray air and whitewater obstacles. Puma's jet bucks in the low-level turbulence, wings flexing slightly. He checks his heading, cross-checks with the inertial nav. Everything matches, fuel tight but acceptable. Neptune has gone silent now as planned, radio discipline. Distance to estimated target 30 miles, Lince reports, his tone clipped. We'll be coming up on their radar horizon soon, Puma knows. At these altitudes, the brightest radar, if it's on, will only see them when they're roughly 20 to 25 miles away. That gives maybe 2-3 minutes of warning, less once you account for reaction time. He glances at the AGAVE radar control. It sits there like a forbidden button. They have to climb to make it work effectively. At sea-skimming height, the radar sees almost nothing beyond the next wave. 5 more miles, then we pop to 150 meters, he says. One sweep, no more. One sweep, Lince echoes. His heart rate picks up. This is the most vulnerable phase. Climb too high for too long, and they light up on brightish scopes. Stay too low, and they'll find nothing. Launch blind, waste their irreplaceable missiles into empty ocean. Behind them, the 130 is already far away, turning back home. There is no second tanking. Fuel window is nudging closer. The number on Puma's EUD is a silent countdown. In Sheffield's ops room, 940. New bearing line, bearing 230. Faint, the electronic warfare operator calls. Duke Morgan swivels, say again, bearing 230, affirmative. Emission looks like could be in air. Search radar, sir. Narrow pulse. Morgan leans in behind the operator, looking at the flickering traces. The ESEM system converts RARF into lines on a circular display. He frowns. Could that be our own 960? 5 bouncing, side lobes, he asks. Different frequency, Sir Anther, it's gone again. Hartley steps closer. Report, short burst on a frequency consistent with the French AGAVE radar, Captain, Morgan says carefully. Could be a Super Etendards, AGAVE, the radar that guides Exocet missiles. They've all seen the briefings. Single hit only, nothing steady, bearing 230, no range data. Could be them sniffing for us, Morgan adds. Hartley weighs it. One burst, could be a glitch, could be clutter, could be the thing that kills them. EM cone status, he asks again. Yellow, sir. We can go to red at your order, but that will spike our signature. Red means all sensors on, radars blazing. The carriers will know their general location is compromised, so will any Argentine SIGINT. Hartley listens to the hum of the consoles, the click of keys. A missed call could bring down wrath from above or cost them their lives. How confident are you it's hostile, he asks. Morgan hesitates a fraction. That pause is its own kind of tension. 50-50, sir. One hit only. Could be a sporadic reflection from the fleet tanker or their Neptune. Range is unknown. If it is a Super Etendards, they are still over the horizon. Hartley nods once. Maintain cone yellow, he decides, but put the Sea Dart system on full readiness. Get the missile directors warmed up. Well, not be caught flat-footed. Morgan relays orders. In another compartment, Sea Dart missile handlers move, checking connections, starting gyros. The 909 fire control radars begin their slow spin-up, warming their waveguides. A race begins. Out on the ocean, the Argentine jets are already starting their climb. 940 to 25 miles southwest of Sheffield. Puma pulls back gently on the stick. The altimeter unwinds upwards, 45 meters, 70 meters, 100. He feels the air smooth a little as they break above the worst of the spray. Climbing 150 meters, he says. Copy, Lince responds. Both jets hold their nose angle precisely. He doesn't dare go higher, Aggie Vone. He flips the radar to active. The antenna in the nose begins sweeping a narrow fan ahead. The scope floods with ground clutter. Ocean returns static. He adjusts the gain, squeezes the azimuth. Come on, he murmurs. At 25 miles, the British task group is just beginning to rise over his radar horizon. The high masts appear on his screen first, thin spikes of reflection. Then 3, maybe 4 larger blobs. He sees it like ghostly hills rising from the sea. Contact, he says, heart leaping. Multiple returns, range 4 miles, bearing 0, at least 2 major ships, maybe 3. Lince confirms, his own radar seeing similar. Big cluster in the middle. That's the carrier group, Puma says. He has to pick his target quickly. The Exocets will lock on the strongest radar or reflective surface in their field when they go active. From this angle, the nearest large radar signature might be one of the escorts rather than the carriers. He remembers Riva's words, "We are hunting a hole." Slot in between the outer return and center cluster, he decides. Well, let the missiles choose, arming Exocets. His thumb throws the switch. The amber safe light on the panel flips to red. Armed? There it is. The invisible line crossed. Exocet uno, listo, Lince says. Puma's weapon panel shows green light. Missile ready, seeker cooled, nav input accepted. He knows the envelope. Minimum launch range about 6 nautical miles. Maximum around 30, 5 for a sea level attack. Any closer and the missile might not have time to descend to cease, skimming and arm its warhead fuse properly. Right now Thayer at 24 miles, perfect, but Thayer also high enough to be seen, 942 HMS Sheffield ops room. Multiple air contacts, the radar operator shouts, bearing 230, range about 20 miles, low. Everything happens at once. The 965 picture blossoms with 2 small, spiky returns sliding in from the southwest, just brushing over the horizon line. Low-level contacts confirm 2 fast movers, low altitude, range decreasing rapidly, Morgan calls. His hand flicks to a headset switch. All stations, air raid warning red. Air attack imminent. Captain Hartley is already moving. Action stations, EM. Cone red. Get me sea dart firing solutions now. Where are my directors? Alarms begin to howl through the ship. Red lights flash along passageways. Sailors drop cups, grab helmets, and sprint for positions. The 909 directors, still warming up, swing slowly towards the new threat vector. They need several seconds to stabilize, lock, and hand off guidance. Seconds they don't have. In the upper deck lookout's world, the horizon is suddenly broken by a glint of sunlight. 2 gray darts barely above the waves. Fast jets bearing green 8s, Eero, the lookout yells, voice torn away by the wind. On the bridge, the officer of the watch presses binoculars to his face. I see them, low, very low, Hartley knows the timeline. At 450 knots closing speed, 20 miles turns into 0 in barely more than 2 minutes. And somewhere out there, under one of those jets, there is probably an Exocet. See dart status, he barks. Director's still coming on lane. Morgan snaps back. We were not fully powered, sir. Ian. Cone Hartley cuts the blame off with a sharp gesture. Just get me a shot. Out at 24 miles, Puma steadies his jet. Range 4, Lince calls. Launching Exocets in 3. Wound Puma squeezes the trigger. Fox-toi, he breathes, borrowing the French brevity for a radar-guided missile, the language of the aircraft's birth. Under his left wing, the A-39 Exocet shudders, then drops, its small booster igniting a fraction of a second later. White flame, gray smoke. For an instant, the jet lurches up from the sudden loss of weight. Then the missile's autopilot noses it down, seeking its programmed altitude just above the wave. Beside him, Lince's missile comes off the rail as well, a twin tongue of fire. 2 spears leave their hosts, curving down toward the sea. On Puma's weapon panel, the missile readout shifts to fire. The guidance handoff is complete. The Exocet's inertial systems guide them to the target area. When they reach about 10 to 12 miles from the estimated target, their nose radars will come alive, searching independently. Puma jerks his jet down again, throttle to maximum, pushing back toward the deck. Agave off, descend, turn to heading 180, he orders. We're done here, copy, Lince says. They slam back toward 45 meters above the water, dragging vapor trails, turning sharply south. Behind them, two white wakes tear across the Atlantic, converging. In the ops room of AM Sheffield, someone's world narrows to a single, shocking phrase. Missile launch. ESM detects Exocet guidance. On the ESM scope, narrow, characteristic pulses appear. Frequency, pattern, repetition. Exocet. Morgan feels ice in his veins. Chaff. Deploy chaff now, he calls. But the chaff system is tied to the combat data system, which has just been told to wake up from a semi-dormant state. The software lags, radars change modes, milliseconds pile into seconds. Somewhere in that chain, a human operator hesitates, checking with an officer before firing explosive charges overboard. Sea Dart ready in 10 seconds, a voice says. Directors locked. Hartley stares at the radar plot. Two tiny markers break off from the aircraft, streaking towards them at high speed, barely above sea level. One of them appears to fade, losing solid contact. A pattern interrupt, sir. Morgan says, eyes narrowing, one of those missiles may have failed to pick a target, or it's using sea clutter, hard to tell. On Puma's side, 15 miles away, one Exocet's onboard computer hits a bad line of code. Its seeker tries to wake up too early, sees nothing but spray, then glitches. For a second, its nose wobbles. It dives a fraction lower than intended. Sea spray slams into the radome. It overcorrects, its autopilot fighting the confusion. The missile's path becomes marginal. The other missile, however, runs true, its guidance perfect. It hasn't even switched on its radar yet. Sheffield has seconds. On the bridge, the officer of the watch sees something, a dark dot on the water, a smoke line. What is that? He whispers. Then realization slams in. Missile inbound, he screams. Bearing green 10. Hartley's decision window snaps shut around him. He has chaff, guns, missiles, maneuvers, but Timey does not have time. Hard starboard, full ahead, he orders, trying to comb the missile's track to narrow the target at presence. The helmsman hauls the wheel. The ship begins to respond, but 800 tons of steel does not sidestep like a fighter. Below, in the Sea Dart control room, hands hover over firing keys. Lock achieved, a controller shouts. Permission to fire? Morgan's face is lit by two different glows, one from the Sea Dart consoles showing a solid lock, and one from the threat screen, where the missile symbol has closed to 6 miles. Sea Dart minimum engagement range, roughly 4 nautical miles. Inside that, its own guidance envelope collapses. The missile cannot turn sharply enough, and the proximity fuse may not arm. We're almost inside min range. Morgan breathes. He looks at Hartley. Outside, in the screaming wind, the Exocet rides the curvature of the sea, still hidden from most of the ship's radar lobes by ground clutter. Hard limits stack up. Radar horizon, min-range gate, EM, cone delay, fire, Hartley says. The Sea Dart controller presses the key. In the launcher above deck, a white missile erupts from its twin. Rail, flame, and smoke gouting. It claws into the air. But the geometry is bad. The incoming exhaust, it is too low, too close, too fast. The Sea Dart arcs skyward, its guidance laws optimized for high, flying aircraft, not something skimming a few meters above the water. It curves, hunts, straining to bend down toward the tiny target crossing in. It misses, its seeker never quite finding the sea skimmer lost in the surface clutter. The Exocet does not miss. In the last seconds, Sheffield's lookouts see it clearly. A small, pale dart, a rooster tail of spray behind it. Impact in 5 for Morgan whispers without meaning to. On the plotting screen, the icon merges with the ship's symbol. Then the whole ops room seems to jump. White noise fills every headset. The Exocet slams into Sheffield's starboard side, just below the main deck, between the forward and midship compartments. It rips through thin steel, punches into machinery spaces, and, whether its warhead fully detonates or not, it sprays burning fuel and hot fragments through cable trunks and ventilation ducts. Lights flicker, some go out entirely. Suddenly, the ship is not a calm, humming platform. It is a maze filling with smoke and fire. For a second, the deck seems to jump sideways. In the ops room, half the screens go white, then black. The main status board flickers, red and green rectangles freezing mid, blink. Loose folders fly from a console and fan through the air. Hartley grabs the nearest rail as the floor shudders under his boots. Somewhere forward and below, a deep metallic scream rips through the ship as steel tears. Then the lights die, emergency lamps flick on a heartbeat later, dim and orange, the air tastes of ozone and hot metal. Report, Hartley barks, no answer, headsets dangle off heads. Some men are on the floor, stunned, someone groans in the dark. In the cramped forward mess deck, sailors are thrown from benches, mugs hurled, fluorescent tubes popping overhead. The deck pitches, then steadies, there is a moment of shocked silence, then smoke begins to creep. In the engine spaces, a roar of fire and a blast of pressure knock men off ladders. Pipes flex. One of the main fire main lines a fat steel pipe feeding seawater to the ship's fire hose. Runs right through the area the Exocet just carved. It splits like a vein, water at high pressure gushes, hissing, then abruptly drops as a valve slams or the line collapses. In the ops room, the damage. Control board shows red lights blossoming amidships. Morgan shakes his head clear, feeling warm wetness where he smacked his temple against a console edge. He blinks and sees smeared blood on his knuckles. Power loss forward, communications. We've lost main comms, someone calls, voice thin, half-choked. Hartley steadies his breathing, sound the ship's general alarm again. Get me damage, control reports. We've been hit starboard amidships. We need boundary cooling now. Morgan flips to backup circuits. Internal comms air Apache, sir. I can't raise forward to central. A lot of trunking's gone. He tries anyway, thumb pressing a talk switch. This is PO, all damage. Control parties report, static, then faintly through a half, burned line a voice. Dig forward here. We've got heavy smoke, power out, possible fire in computer room and galley spaces. Attempting to access. Fire main pressure is low. Repeat, fire main pressure low. Low fire main. Hartley feels that like a punch to the gut. Without strong water pressure, hoses droop, no jet, just a dribble. Against a fuel-fed fire, that's death. Engine room report, he snaps. This time, nothing comes back. He looks at Morgan, are they down or just cut off? We don't know yet, sir. Hartley takes a breath, forces calm. Set smoke boundaries, shut all watertight doors transverse a frame. What we think is the blast. We need to keep it from spreading forward and aft. He knows what that means. Sealing doors may trap people, but if they don't, the ship will become an oven stem to stern. Get emergency hoses set from aft fire main if we have it. Send teams with extinguishers until we can restore pressure. And get me external comms to the task group. They need to know we're hit. Morgan nods, already triaging circuits. Main UF antenna feed is gone. Well, use the whip. But sir, we're emitting smoke like a beacon right now. They probably already know. He tries anyway. Herms, this is Sheffield. We have been hit by missile. Starboard side. Fire amidships. We the transmission cuts. If coupler losing power for a moment as generators trip on overload. Somewhere aft, a sailor keys a portable set. Any station, this is Sheffield. We've taken a hit. We the line dies in static. The ship is suddenly alone with its fire. 944, 40 miles south of Sheffield. The Super Etendards claw low over the sea, their bellies skimming the tops of waves, salt spray licking at their undercarriages. Puma risks a glance over his shoulder. Behind him, only gray water and a low band of darker cloud. No tiny shapes arrowing after them. He exhales slowly, fuel state. He asks, 2,000 kilos, Lince replies. We're tight, but okay. If we don't dawdle, that's bingo plus a thin margin. They have burned precious fuel in the attack run and climb. The flight plan was razor thin already. Maintain 150 feet, heading 180, Puma says. We stay low until we're beyond their cap radius. No radios until past Point Charlie. Copy. He wants to know so badly. Did the missiles hit? Did they find a carrier and escort? Nothing. He imagines the Exocet, low, hungry, nose-seeking metal. He's trained for it. He's seen the test footage. He knows what a warhead that size does to steel and men. His thumb itches to flip the radio and ask Neptune, ask anyone, but silence is their protection now. Any transmission could be homed in on by British ESM, guiding sea harriers like sharks. Instead, he runs the numbers in his head. Time from launch to impact if the range was 20. 4 miles roughly 1 minute 50 seconds to the seeker activation point. Then maybe a minute of homing. By now, whatever fate the missiles met, it's already sealed. He just doesn't get to see it. He forces his eyes back to his instruments. Altitude, attitude, fuel, repeat, somewhere far astern, the pilots of Viking 1, Sea Harrier cap that had just been turning for home received scrambled calls. Viking 1, this is Herms Ops. We have possible missile attack on one of the Type 42s. Turn to bearing 24-0, investigate. Be advised, possible Super Etendards in your area. The Sea Harrier leader, call sign Viking lead, hauls his jet around, blue-gray fuselage cranking into a hard turn. Roger Herms, turning now, he replies. He glances at his fuel gauge. It is not a comforting sight. They were already on the leg back to the carrier. Reserves have been planned. To chase these intruders, they'll be flying toward the Argentine coast, away from home. What's your fuel? He asks his wingman. Same as you, lead. We don't have much wiggle room. Understood. He weighs it. Chasing the Super Etendards might mean missing them by minutes and running out of fuel hundreds of miles from Herms. Or they might catch them and prevent another attack. He banks, commits. Well, go as far as minimum fuel allows, he tells Herms Ops. After that, we must turn or ditch. There is a pause. Understood, Viking. This is your call. Fuel. The eternal, merciless constraint on Sheffield 947, the smoke is thickening. In the forward mess, sailors pull on makeshift mask rags, t-shirts soaked in water from sinks that still run for now. Some fixed breathing apparatus sets are already dragged away by the first damage control teams. Down a ladder, 2 men struggle to haul a wounded rating with a broken leg up a narrow stair, their breathing ragged in the hot air. The smoke is not just gray, it is oily, acrid. The exhaust's unburned rocket fuel, diesel oil, paint, plastic, and insulation all vaporize into a toxic mix. In the ops room, Hartley coughs, feels his throat burn. The air handling system has been compromised. Fans that should clear smoke are dead or feeding it in from other spaces. Bridge reports visibility 0 on upper decks near the impact. Morgan says hoarsely, hand over his mouth. His console is dimmer, now emergency power is limited. We're trying to route portable blowers in, but another restraint. No power, no ventilation, fire will only grow. Hartley presses his palm on the edge of a console, feeling the heat seeping through the metal. We need to get on top of this aft. What about the magazines? He asks. Sea Dart magazine shows sealed and cool at the moment, Morgan answers. The fire is more in the computer room, galley, machinery spaces. But if it burns through bulk, heads everyone in the room imagines it unbidden. The magazine blowing, a sheet of flame ripping the ship apart. We need boundary cooling on those bulkheads, Hartley says. Even if we have to bucket brigade water to them, in the forward damage control party, a petty officer pulls a fire hose from its bracket, twists the nozzle. A sad weak trickle runs out. Main's gone, he shouts. We've got nothing. Use extinguishers. Cotwo, his chief yells back, coughing. He shoulders a heavy red cylinder, rushes into a compartment lit orange. The roar hits him like sound made solid. Flames are already licking up cable trunks, black snakes along the overhead. Sprinklers hang useless, dry. He opens the extinguisher. A white plume blasts out, pushing the fire back a meter, maybe 2. It eats that space in seconds when the flow stops. In such a space with that much fuel, extinguishers are a bandage on an arterial bleed. The fire laughs and keeps growing. 953, 120 miles south of the Falklands. Puma's navigation display shows the line back to Point Charlie, the turn point where they can safely climb and call home. If they make it, fuel edging toward margins he does not like. He does his own mental math again, distance to coast. Headwind component, reserve, he chews his lip inside the oxygen mask. Lince, well climbed to 30 feet at Point Charlie and call, he says. Short transmission only, then back low, understood, Lince replies. They cross the invisible line a few minutes later. 3,000, Puma says, easing the stick back. The ocean falls away slightly. The turbulence eases. The sky opens at altitude, his radio range expands dramatically. He flicks to the secure frequency and keys the mic. Base, this is Puma. 2 exocets launched. Repeat, 2 exocets launched en groupe. We are egressing south. Fuel critical but within margins. No pursuit observed. A pause. Static. Then, Puma, this is Rivas. Understood. Neptune reports one large explosion and heavy smoke on their last sweep before breaking off. No details on which ship. Puma's heart thumps. One hit, he asks. Neptune's operator says it looked like one, but they were at max range and had to turn to avoid cap. They could not linger. Good work. Now get home. The line cuts. He wants to ask more, which ship, carrier, escort, but every extra second on the radio is a tiny flare saying here we are to the world. Back low, he orders, shoving the nose down. The sea rises up again. He cannot see the plume of smoke climbing behind his horizon. On Sheffield, 955. Smoke is now in every conversation. On the bridge, visibility is down to a few meters in some directions. Sailors move with heads low, groping for ladders. Below, in a passageway, a young seaman crawls along the deck, hand on the baseboards, following the tactile feel to his mess. He hears someone coughing ahead, finds two men disoriented, eyes streaming. Follow me, he rasps, stay low. They move like ghosts in a coffin, guided by muscle memory and touch. In the ops room, Morgan pulls off his headset. The earpads are hot. Captain, communications with Herms reestablished. He croaks. They confirm we are the only one hit. Glasgow and others are clear for now. Cap is searching for your attackers, but no joy yet. Hardly not. Task group ordering support ships too close for possible assistance. Morgan adds, Arrow is nearest. Ida 20 minutes, support. Help if they can stay afloat and keep the fire forward of the magazine. They might yet save the ship. And do the Exocet's work. Hartley knows what he must do. Pass to all hands, we are to continue firefighting. No one abandon ship until I say so, he orders. We can bring this under control, he believes it, or forces himself to, because the alternative is unthinkable. Giving up a destroyer a symbol of British naval power to a single missile. He thumbs the tannoy microphone, speaking to his ship. This is the captain. We have taken a hit and we have a serious fire. All hands to damage. Control stations, we are not abandoning. We fight this. I repeat, we fight. Men scattered through the compartments hear his voice through intermittent speakers, some cracked, some silent. The message does not reach everywhere, but where it does, backs straighten, they press into the smoke. 1005 over the South Atlantic. Viking lead, fuel state, Herms ask again. Barely safe, the Sea Harrier pilot admits. He has seen nothing on his Blue Fox radar. The Super Etendards were low and running away, presenting minimal radar cross-section and closing to the limit of his set's range. He knows intellectually that the Argentines could be down on the deck, invisible, already well outside his search cone. His gut says they are gone, but the picture in his mind of a burning British ship will not leave. Herms, Viking lead, negative contacts, fuel at Joker. We must turn back now or risk ditching. The controller on Herms has his own constraints. Helicopter coverage, sea state, daylight. Ditching a Harrier far south means sending helicopters into waters teeming with cold and distance. Understood. Viking, turn to base. Well, Vector next, cap further out. As Viking lead banks back toward the northeast, he looks one last time at the empty, steel-gray horizon. Somewhere beyond, two small delta wings flash in the sun briefly. Then Puma and Lince are gone into cloud. Their dance with the British fighter's potential, dead, lie never quite happens. Constraint geometry denies it. Back on Sheffield 1012, the fire is winning. Smoke seeps into the ops room through cable runs and door gaps. Every intake seems to bring more in. Morgan wipes sweat and soot from his eyes, blinking at the damp, damaged board. Red lights have spread. Some flicker and go out as their circuits melt. He pulls his anti-flash hood down tighter, but it does little for the acrid sting. Dick from Opswat's our latest. He calls into a handset. The fire's in the forward auxiliary machinery room and spreading through the computer deck. A harried voice answers. We've lost control of the main fan rooms. We're trying to set boundaries, but the heat, the line dies. Hartley looks at the temperature gauge for a bulkhead near the magazine. It's creeping up. We cannot flood the magazine without power to the valves, Morgan notes quietly. Manual override is possible, but the route runs through the hot zone, meaning sending men into what might already be unsurvivable conditions. The choice is narrow. Smoke thickens in the ops room. Even with masks donned, eyes stream. Captain, we must consider moving ops to the bridge or aft, where there's less smoke, Morgan suggests. Hartley shakes his head. We abandon this room, we lose centralized control, and I need to know exactly how bad it is before I decide anything. As if in answer, a crackling voice appears on a still working internal speaker. Captain, forward deck, we can't hold the starboard side. The fire is into the accommodation spaces. The heat is making the deck plate soft. We're sending people aft. We can't get water on the fire line. It's out of control, out of control. The phrase hangs in the air. He hears it again in his mind when reading damage reports in training. The point at which doctrine shifts from fight to save who you can, he stares at the bulkhead. The paint is starting to bubble. Behind that steel is a magazine full of Sea Dart missiles. If that goes, there will be nothing left. Where's Arrow? He asks. Closing to 3 miles, sir, Morgan says, voice hoarse. Hartley straightens. Prepare to send distress to Arrow. Tell them we may need to transfer personnel, but continue fighting. We hold as long as the magazine is safe. 1020, amps Arrow, 3 miles off Sheffield. On the Type 21 frigate's bridge, the captain watches through binoculars as Sheffield appears over the horizon. She is a smudge of black against gray. As they draw closer, the scene resolves. Sheffield is motionless, dead in the water. Smoke pours from the middle of the ship, a dirty column blown sideways by the wind. Jesus, someone breathes. The captain feels his own chest tighten. He's known Hartley for years. Helm, bring us in on his starboard side, he orders. As close as we dare, we'll be taking off his wounded and any non-essential personnel if he decides to abandon. His operations officer leans closer. Sir, if there are still missiles incoming, I know, the captain says. But we can't leave them burning like that. Keep Sea Cat and guns manned. If we see anything, we'll throw up everything we have. Arrow approaches, white bow wave fanning. As she comes alongside Sheffield's starboard beam, crewmen on both ships heft heaving lines, trying to get ropes across in swirling wind and smoke. The heat from Sheffield's hull is palpable even across the narrow strip of water. 1025 Sheffield. Hartley steps onto the starboard bridge wing, anti-flash hood up, mask hanging around his neck. The heat hits him like an oven door opening. He sees Arrow drawing alongside, men waving, lines snaking. He hears faintly the crackle of flames within his own ship. For a second his throat tightens. This steel has been home. Responsibility, pride. He forces himself back into captaincy. Signal Arrow, we have serious fire, magazine threatened. Request assistance with evacuation of non-essential personnel. He tells a signalman. He goes back inside to the bridge's relative safety. SO, he says, speaking to his executive officer, face streaked with soot. Organize controlled abandonment for sections forward of frame where is our worst fire. Frames midship and forward, the SO coughs. We can start moving non-critical personnel onto Arrow, but some damage. Control parties still want to fight. Hartley nods slowly. We will keep a skeleton dick party and essential command staff aboard as long as it's safe. Everyone else transfers. If that magazine goes, we lose everyone on board. He feels the invisible clock ticking louder. Behind him, on the bulkhead, the temperature gauge climbs a fraction more. 1035 Arrow's upper deck. Sailors line the rail, hauling in men from Sheffield along a makeshift, jack-stee bicycle, a rope bridge-rigged between the ships. The two hulls roll and sway independently, threatening to smash together. The gap between them alternately yawns and vanishes. Mind your hands, keep tension on that line. A petty officer yells. Sheffield's men cross-hand. Overhand, some in firefighting gear, some in shirts blackened by smoke. A few are carried, injuries swaddled. Each crossing is a tiny war of balance and fear. On Sheffield's side, the list is slight but growing. Water pooling from the fractured fire main and hoses has nowhere to go but low. Combined with fire damage, stability is becoming another cruel equation. In the ops room, Hartley and Morgan remain. Every few minutes, someone brings a new report, each one worse. Sir, the forward auxiliary machinery room is untenable, deck collapsing in places. Sir, smoke in the forward mess deck is so thick we can't search some compartments. Sir, the fire is spreading along cables above the magazine. Morgan meets Hartley's eye. We can't cool it, we can't flood it, and the boundary temperatures are still rising. He swallows, throat raw from the smoke. If we stay much longer, Captain, we may not be able to get off. Hartley stares at the board one last time. So many red lights, so many circuits already dead and gone. He thinks of the training phrase again. Fighting a losing fight is noble, dying in an inevitable explosion is not. He nods once. Very well, pass the word, abandon ship. All remaining personnel to transfer to Arrow or boats. Last-ditch measures to be taken, but leave no one behind who can move. Morgan's jaw tightens. Aye, aye, sir, the words taste like ash. 1,150 miles from the Argentine coast. Puma's fuel gauges are now in the region he would never usually allow. He can feel the engine's vibrations, searching for any hint of roughness. At low level, spray ingestion is always a risk. But so far the sea-skimming, 8 per on, distance to coast, he asks. 60 miles, Lince answers. That's both close and far. Cloud banks mass ahead, overland, the weather is patchy. If they have to divert, options are limited. He thinks about ditching, what it would feel like to bring this jet down into the freezing South Atlantic. The slap of the water, the canopy shattering, cold rushing in. He shakes his head, banishes the thought. He flares their altitude slightly, trading a small amount of safety margin against radar for better fuel economy. It's a compromise he'd never make with enemy fighters known to be nearby, but Viking Lead is heading back north now, unaware that Puma and Lince are skimming towards safety. At Rio Grande, Rivas and his staff lean over their own plot. Fuel predictions say they should be in range now, one of his officers mutters. Rivas stares at the southern edge of Argentine airspace like he can will 2 small shapes into existence. Finally, faintly, ground radar picks them up. 2 low-level tracks, squawking friendly. Cheers break out in the control room. Rivas doesn't smile, not yet. Get them vectors to the straight in, he orders, no delay. They're low on fuel. Minutes later, Puma and Lince break over the coast, land emerging from the haze like a promise. The runway at Rio Grande stretches ahead, dark gray on lighter sand. Flaps, Puma says, running his landing checklist with practiced speed. The missile pylons under their wings are empty, looking wrong. Gear down, he flares, kisses the runway. The tires scream, then settle. As they roll out, engines spooling down, Puma finally exhales fully. He has survived. Whether the same can be said for the men on the ship he struck, he doesn't yet know. As he taxis in, he sees ground crew waving, some cheering. Fire trucks stand by, classic precaution for jets thought to be fuel. Critical. He shuts down, the cockpit suddenly eerily quiet. Rivas climbs the ladder before he's even unstrapped. Well, the captain asks, voice tight. 2 missiles fired. Neptune saw an explosion and smoke, Puma replies. We saw nothing, we had to run, Rivas nods. His eyes are bright. Intelligence from Buenos Aires says the British admit a hit on one of their destroyers, he says. Details are vague, they may be downplaying it. Puma feels something twist inside him, satisfaction. Duty, a small sharp pang off something else. Their ship was aiming missiles at our boys on the islands. Rivas adds quietly, as if sensing the what-ifs in Puma's eyes. You did your job, Puma nods, I know. He glances at the exocet pylon, now bare. 3 missiles left in all Argentina. Next time they will be more ready, he says. Rivas' face hardens, yes, and so must we. Sheffield 1115. The order passes unevenly through compartments and passageways. Abandon ship, all hands not engaged in last. Ditch deck, proceed to upper deck for transfer and boats. For some, it's a relief, a chance out of the choking hell. For others, it feels like treason, leaving their post. In the ops room, Morgan pulls off his headset and hangs it carefully, absurdly, on its hook. Time to go, sir, he tells Hartley. The captain looks around the room where he's fought his ship, real and simulated, so many times. We've shut down the systems, he asks, ridiculous in the circumstances. Morgan half smiles through soot. Power's gone anyway, she's more ghost than ship now. They step out into the corridor, smoke thick. Each man wears life belt and anti-flash gear. They make their way to the starboard side, where lines to arrows still creak under strain. The frigate's hull looms like a gray cliff, her bow dipping and rising. Sheffield's deck is hot under their boots. Armed with hoses that barely dribble, small deck teams are still cooling what bulkheads they can reach near the magazine. applying water from buckets and whatever containers they can find. It feels almost symbolic. Hartley pauses enough, he tells them. You've done what you can, get off. That's an order. They hesitate, then obey, faces carved with reluctance. He turns to his SO. Ensure everyone's off before you leave. It'll be last off. The SO nods, as it should be, sir. As they work down the list, checking compartments, calling out, they do their best, but smoke has cut some spaces off completely. They cannot know with absolute certainty that every space is clear. It is a weight Hartley will carry. At the rail, men queue to cross to Arrow, then down scrambling nets to boats. The sea is cold, choppy but not savage. Rafts bloom like orange petals. On Arrow's deck, sailors haul men aboard, wrapping them in blankets, pressing tea and rum into shaking hands. One rating, eyes wide, repeats, it came out of the sea. We never saw it, just fire. Hartley waits until the last group is across. He feels the heat at his back like a living thing's breath. He takes one last look down Sheffield's length. The sleek Type 40, 2 lines are marred by blackened scars, smoke pouring midships. Antennas hang at odd angles. He lifts a hand, briefly touching the rail. Take care, he murmurs to himself. To the ship, he doesn't know. Then he grips the line and crosses to Arrow. As his boots hit the other deck, the Sheffield behind him seems to sag, as if robbed of some animating force. 1,300 later that day, from Arrow's deck, the ex-Sheffield crew watch their ship burn, now at a safer distance. Yarmouth has taken a tow line, attempting to pull the wounded destroyer further from the task group. The fire still rages, smoke trails across the water. Some men look away, others can't. The sea is dotted with rafts emptied of men, bobbing. The South Atlantic is merciless. Several sailors have already succumbed to hypothermia before being pulled aboard. Casualty lists begin to form, names marked missing, injured, or dead. No numbers yet, just a sick sense of loss. Hartley stands on Arrow's bridge wing, borrowed binoculars pressed to his eyes. He watches his ship in tow, stubbornly afloat despite everything done to her. It is both a relief and a cruelty. If she can stay up, maybe she can be repaired. If she sinks, he will be the captain who lost a ship in war. I will have to answer for him, Cone, he says quietly. Morgan beside him shakes his head. We all will, sir, but it was the doctrine. We followed orders from higher, and even with radars blazing, that missile would still have been low in the clutter. The Exocet was designed to exploit our blind spots. Hartley lowers the binoculars. Tell that to the families, he says. On the other side of the world, British newspapers will soon print headlines, destroyer hit by missile. The word exhaust, it will become a curse and a fascination, altering procurement plans and naval architectures for decades. But for now, on this gray afternoon, it is just a piece of metal and design that has found human flesh. 1,450 Arrow's ops room, reports filter in from Yarmouth. Sheffield still burning but afloat, a voice says over the radio. We have a tow established, heading to the north, away from the threat axis. Fire seems to be subsiding somewhat, but flares up unpredictably. The sea is beginning to rise. The South Atlantic weather is turning. Hartley listens, jaw tight. He knows a wounded ship in tow is vulnerable to both sea and enemy. But the Argentines, cautious with their limited weapon stock, do not send another Super Etendards this day. Constraints on both sides hold them back. In Rio Grande, news cameras capture Puma and Lince stepping off their jets, greeted by senior officers. In Buenos Aires, politicians will talk of heroic blows and turning the tide. Puma sits later in the squadron ready room, helmet off, a cup of bitter coffee in his hands. On the div in the corner, a fuzzy broadcast from a local station shows stock footage of British ships, overlaid with an announcer's voice. We have information that a British destroyer was hit and is believed to be severely damaged, possibly sinking. Someone claps him on the shoulder. Seems you lit them up, a fellow pilot says. Puma nods, unsmiling. In his mind, he sees not steel, but men. Faces under helmets, hands on consoles. He is a professional, he knows they are too. We did our duty, he says softly. And tomorrow, the other pilot asks. Puma looks at the map on the wall. Red pins, blue pins, circles of range. Well, do it again, he replies, because duty is its own straight line, running through all the noise. Out on the gray ocean, AM's Sheffield continues to burn into the night, a wounded shape dragging a dark smear across the waves. The first missile in a new kind of naval war has found its mark, and the constraints radar horizon, fuel, doctrine, human reaction time have written their part of the story as surely as any pilot or captain. Evening, 4 May 1982, the South Atlantic darkens fast, cloud lowers, the horizon blurs, and the wind picks up white caps that slap against steel. AM's Sheffield lies low in the water, in tow behind the older destroyer Yarmouth. A thick cable runs from Yarmouth's stern to Sheffield's bow, taut as a drawn bowstring. The tow is slow, 5 knots, maybe 6 when the seas permit. On Sheffield's blackened decks, no one walks now. Her crew is gone, spread between Arrow, Yarmouth, and Herms. The ship is an empty shell, still smoldering in places, cables hanging like burned nerves. On Arrow, Hartley stands in the wardroom, now repurposed as an emergency sickbay. The air smells of disinfectant, burned cloth, and sweat. Men lie on tables and mattresses, burns bandaged, faces pale. Medics move from bunk to bunk, checking drips, adjusting oxygen. Morgan sits on a bulkhead seat, a mug of tea cooling in his hand, though he hardly tastes it. 20 confirmed dead, a young officer says quietly, reading from a clipboard. Several missing, presumed still aboard. He doesn't have to finish. Hartley nods once, every name a wait. And wounded, he asks, 26, sir, varying degrees, most out of immediate danger. The numbers slot into his mind next to ship's data, fuel rates, radar ranges. Human cost measured like tonnage, signal to Fleetic, he asks. We've already sent the basic report, Morgan answers. Details will go in the after action. There will be a board of inquiry, of course there will, he sees as if written on a whiteboard, EM, cone procedures. Sea dart readiness, location of the ship relative to carriers, structural vulnerabilities. And somewhere in the testimony, the moment he chose not to go to full radar emissions based on a 50 ESM hit. A fuzzy I gave spike over a noisy sea, would full emissions have changed much? Maybe the 965 would have painted the Super Etendards 10 seconds earlier. Maybe Sea Dart would have had 10 seconds more. The missile still would have been low, in the clutter. Sea Dart's guidance still would have struggled to bend down to a cease, giving Dart inside min range. But maybe as a thin shield against hindsight, Morgan seems to know what he's thinking. Captain, you made the best call you could with the information we had, he says. We were following doctrine. Well, fix the doctrine. Hartley nods slowly. He wants to believe that future captains will have sharper tools, clearer templates. But in the pit of his stomach, the image persists. A single missile racing in under a radar horizon, threading through constraints they didn't even know were there. Night Rio Grande, Puma sits on his bunk, still in his green flight suit, boots on the floor. The squadron ready room buzz has died down. Debriefings are done for now. His logbook lies open on his knees. He writes in neat, clipped script. 4 May, Super Etendards 753, sortie to sector south of Malvinas, fuel tight but acceptable, 2:30, 9 launched bearing 60 at 4 in, egress south, low level, no interceptors observed, Neptune report. 1 large explosion in target area, return via Point Charlie, landed with minimum fuel. It looks so clean on paper. He stops the pen over the last line, adds almost as an afterthought, mission assessed as Zito. He isn't sure he likes the word. There's a knock at the door. Intra, he says. Lince steps in, hair damp from a quick shower, face lined with fatigue. He closes the door behind him. They're already talking about making it into posters, he says dryly. 2 brave pilots, tiny force, striking imperialist fleet. Newspapers, Steve, well be famous, Puma grimaces. They weren't the ones down there at 70 meters, watching their fuel tick down. 70, Lince snorts. Your altimeter is as optimistic as you are. He sits on the opposite bunk, leans forward. I got a call from my brother in Buenos Aires, he adds. He says the Brits admit a destroyer is out of action and being towed. Some politicians are already celebrating. Puma rolls the pen between his fingers. A ship is out of the fight, he says. That matters. Fewer missiles at our aircraft, fewer eyes watching the approaches. And the men on her? Lince asks. Puma glances at him. You sound like a priest, he says. Lince shrugs. I studied engineering. I know what it's like to design something that moves and breathes. A ship is like that. I can't help thinking about the ones trapped in it when it burns. Puma looks down at the photo by his bed. His wife, his son. They are professionals like us, he says. They knew the risks when they sailed south, like we did when we took off. We don't hate them. We have our orders, they have theirs. He puts the pen down, stands, stretches. Tomorrow we'll be back in the simulator, he adds. Rivas will want us sharper. The English will be on guard now. No more surprise. Next time their cap will be meaner, their radars louder. And we still only have 3 missiles left, Lince says. That's the constraint that never quite leaves their minds. 3 bullets in a gun held together with tape. 3 bullets, Puma echoes. We'd better make each one count. 6 days later. 10 May 1982, South Atlantic. Gray swells lift and drop HMS Sheffield's gutted hull. The fires have long since burned themselves out, starved by lack of fuel after chewing through what they could. What remains is warped metal, peeled paint, and twisted fittings. Yarmouth still has the tow line on, but the sea has turned. Wind howls to force 9. Waves crest at 20 feet, occasionally higher. The tow cable snaps taut and slack in brutal rhythm. Inside Sheffield, compartments that once were dry have taken on water through blast breaches and weakened hull seams. Free surface effect the sloshing of water in partially filled space. Yaws at her stability. On Yarmouth's bridge, officers watch the wounded destroyer wrench and sway like a drunk trying to stand in a storm. She's taking on more water, sir, a watch officer says. List increasing to starboard, 20 degrees and growing. Yarmouth's captain bites his lip. If we keep towing, we might pull her under, he says. If we cut, she might ride it out her roll. There is no perfect choice. Behind them, Hartley is on another ship, far enough away that he does feel each heave but close enough that reports trickle to him every hour. He hears the latest and stares at the chart. Sea state like this, with the damage she's taken, her girl might not make it, Morgan says quietly beside him. Hartley clenches his jaw. He remembers stepping over that rail, leaving her. He remembers the heat. He remembers the decision. If she goes under now, miles away, with no lives aboard, the logic of it will be brutal but clean. But to watch your ship sink without you on her decks, that is a captain's particular agony. In Buenos Aires, the news wires pick up a brief statement from London. British Ministry of Defense today confirmed that the destroyer HMS Sheffield, damaged by enemy action earlier in the campaign, has foundered whilst under tow in heavy seas. There were no casualties. At the time of sinking, earlier, 20 members of her crew were lost in the initial attack and subsequent fire. The words are dry, bureaucratic. At Rio Grande, someone reads the line aloud in the squadron office. "See Hundy, they say, she sank." Rivas passes the piece of paper to Puma. He reads it twice. "The sea finished what we started," he says. There is no triumph in his voice. On the South Atlantic, Yarmouth's captain watches as Sheffield's list passes the point of no return. "She's going over," someone shouts. The destroyer rolls slowly, ponderous, as seawater pours through gaping wounds and open hatches. The tow cable goes slack, then taut, then lashes wildly as it slips free. For a moment, Sheffield's keel shows dark against the white and gray, a shape utterly alien, a steel whale tumbling. Then the sea covers her, bubbles, oil, a scatter of debris, and then only waves. The position is logged. 50, 3 for south, 50, 650, 6 west. The first modern British warship lost to enemy action since World War I. I is now a mark on a chart and a patch of oil on a cold ocean. Somewhere above, the wind tears the top off a wave and flings it as spray, unimpressed, weeks later. North Atlantic, a Royal Navy briefing room, projectors hum, shining grainy footage and diagrams on a screen. Hartley sits in the front row, uniform crisp, expression composed. Morgan sits 2 seats over. Around them, other captains, warfare officers, designers from the Ministry of Defense. On the screen, an animation shows a small blip sliding under a radar beam's arc. "We are here to talk frankly about what happened to Sheffield," an admiral at the front says. "Not to assign personal blame, but to learn, because our enemies are not going to stop building sea-skimmers like Exocet." He gestures to the board. "First, radar horizon. At low altitudes, even the best air, search sets are blind beyond 20-odd miles. That is a hard physics limit. We must change our picket geometry to put multiple ships. Horizons overlapping, and we must consider deploying helicopters with radar forward. The slide changes. Sea Dart's engagement envelope appears, a neat butterfly shape of range and altitude. You can see here the minimum range and altitude constraints, another officer explains. Sea Dart was designed for high-flying bombers, not low-level sea skimmers. Within about 4 nautical miles, its ability to engage a target like Exocet is severely degraded. Hartley watches the lines, thinking of that white missile streaking away from his own deck, arcing high while the Exocet snarled low. We are accelerating studies on new point defense systems, the officer continues. Phalanx Caius goalkeeper, we cannot rely on one layer of defense. Another slide. A schematic of Sheffield's internal layout, now internal damage propagation, says a naval architect. The Exocet hit here, a red dot glows midships. The warhead did not fully detonate, but the unburned rocket propellant and residual fuel ignited fires that spread via cable trunks and ventilation. The main fire main was severed at this point. Depriving forward teams of water, he traces a blue line through the red zone. Redundancy of fire mains is being revisited, so is cable routing. We designed for some blast. We did not design for this type of heat and smoke spread. Hartley feels something loosen slightly inside. Not absolution, just context. It wasted one man's hesitation or one bad call. It was a whole lattice of assumptions meeting a new kind of weapon. In Rio Grande, a different briefing. French technical advisors have flown in quietly, under political pressure in quiet bactional agreements. They bring thick binders, technical bulletins. One of them, a middle-aged engineer with tired eyes, stands before a group of Argentine naval aviators. The A-39 Seeker has a narrow beam and is very good at locking on large metallic targets with active radars. He explains in French-accented Spanish. But you must still give it a reasonable target area. Your last mission you did well, considering your information. He glances at Puma and Lince. However, he adds, the more the British spread their ships, use chaff, change formations, the more complicated your shot solutions will become. You have only 3 missiles left. You cannot afford misses. He taps a diagram. Remember the Seeker's activation distance. If you launch too close, below 6 nautical miles, the missile may not have time to fully descend and arm its fuse before impact. Too far and fuel margins and navigation errors grow. Puma notes the numbers. He already knows them, but repetition steadies him. The next slide shows a British ship trailing what looks like a long hose astern. In response to your attacks, they are experimenting with towed radar decoys, the Frenchman says. Inflatable reflectors, false radar sources. Your missile may lock on to these instead of the ship. Lince raises a hand. Is there anything we can do? He asks. The Frenchman shrugs slightly. Approach from bearings where the decoy is masked by the hull. If you can, he says. Use your agave cleverly, but in the end, war is a contest of adaptations. He looks around the room. They are learning from Sheffield. You must learn from Sheffield too. Weeks stretch into months. The Falklands campaign grinds on. Argentine pilots fly, and some don't come back. British ships fire Sea Dart, Sea Wolf, Sea Cat guns. Some missiles miss due to clutter, weather min range, some hit, turning aircraft into brief fireballs over the gray sea. Puma returns to the sky with his last 3 Exocets, in missions that will stalk other target-smitten ships like Atlantic Conveyor, other warships. Some missiles are spoofed by chaff, wasted against decoys. Constraints bite on both sides. Weather closes in on some days, grounding jets and helicopters. Seas too rough for amphibious landings delay others. Fuel windows, maintenance windows, weapons stockpiles, all the quiet, relentless arithmetic of war. Hartley gives his testimony at the Board of Inquiry. He sits in a polished wood room, reporters' scratchings just outside the doors. Inside, the questions are precise, measured. Why did you not order him? Cone read earlier. What was the status of Sea Dart when the contacts were detected? Were chaff launchers armed and ready? He answers each voice level. He explains the brief agave detection, the doctrine, the risk of revealing the task force's precise position. The warming of 909 directors, the seconds, always the seconds. He mentions the sea dart shot they did take, and its failure to intercept at that angle and range. An investigator raises an eyebrow. It conflicts with some existing accounts. Later, the written report will soften that detail for public release, folding it under system not engaged in time. In this version, Sea Dart never leaves the rail. In Hartley's memories, a white plume arcs to the wrong place. Memory and narrative seldom match perfectly. Morgan testifies too. He talks about fire main design, ventilation controls. Smoke spread, the chaos's comms failed, alarms went dead. Would a fully manned dig watch with higher readiness have changed the outcome? An admiral asks. Maybe, Morgan says honestly, but sir, some of our vulnerabilities were baked into the steel long before we sailed south. We can't firefight our way out of bad layout. The admiral nods slowly. Those words will echo in procurement meetings for years. In Buenos Aires, Puma walks past a newsstand and sees a black and white photo. A burnt listing hull, columns of smoke. The caption reads, "The English destroyer Sheffield, grave of imperial arrogance." The rhetoric makes his teeth hurt. He buys the paper anyway. Later that night, alone in his quarters, he reads the small print foreign reports. 20 dead, 26 wounded. He looks at the numbers until they swim. He thinks of their own losses. Skyhawks blown apart by Sea Dart, daggers torn by Sea Wolf, Pucarras shredded by Harrier guns, pilots lost over San Carlos, never found. He adds them silently, sees the war as a ledger with too many red entries on every side. Duty sustains him. The idea that by hitting their ships, he may have saved his own soldiers on the islands from missile fire and shelling. But when he closes his eyes, he still sees a white line over gray water, ending in a wall of black smoke. Months later, after the war, another ceremony, this time in a brightish dockyard. A cold wind cuts through dress uniforms. Families clutch wreaths. A ship's bell tolls slowly. Hartley stands among former Sheffield crew, rows of medals and ribbons on chests that feel strangely heavy. A chaplain reads names one by one, 20 for each. The bell tolls. Morgan swallows hard at the sound. He recognizes half the names as faces from mess decks and consoles. He glances at Hartley. The former captain's jaw is clenched. His eyes are fixed on the roll, up white ensign on its stand. When the chaplain finishes, they step forward together to lay a wreath. The card reads simply, "In memory of our shipmates, AM Sheffield, we will remember." On another continent, in a small base chapel in Patagonia, there is a quieter service. A few Argentines bow their heads, remembering their own dead people. Sailors in the cruiser General Belgrano, soldiers on wind-scoured hills. A priest speaks of duty and sacrifice, of enemies as men, not monsters. Puma sits in the back, hands clasped. When the priest mentions those who perished in fire and sea, on ships struck by our hand, Puma's throat tightens. Afterward, outside, under a hard blue sky, Lince finds him staring south. Thinking about flying again, Lince asks lightly. Puma shakes his head. "Thinking about horizons," he says. "How much we didn't see, each of us." He looks at his friend. "We knew there were constraints fuel, radar, missiles. We flew inside them, pushing where we could. They did the same, and in between people fell." Lince nods. "We trained to hit metal," he says. "None of us trained to carry ghosts." He claps Puma gently on the shoulder. "We carry them anyway. Years pass. Ships are refitted. New radars appear atop masts, their beams sharper. They're processing better at teasing small cease, skimmers out of clutter. Towed decoys trail behind frigates like steel jellyfish. Automatic clothes in weapons. Gatling guns tied to radar and computer sprout around superstructures. Missiles get smarter. Navies practice shoot. Look, shoot doctrines, layer upon layer of engagement envelopes. On simulation screens, icons representing exocets and harpoons and other names slide across digital seas, and officers pontificate about min, range gates, fuse arming distances, and echem burn through. In those simulations, ships often live or die by moving colored shapes on screens a few seconds earlier or later. But behind each colored shape, someone like Puma or Hartley or Morgan still sits strapped into a seat or behind a console, making a call in a fog of incomplete data. In classrooms, young officers study case studies. AM Sheffield, hit by Exocet, May 1980. 2. Bullet points, EM, Cone Doctrine Radar Horizon Limits Fire Main Vulnerability Magazine, Safety Evacuation Decisions. They underline lessons. Don't place primary fire mains where a single hit can take them out. Train for low-level, high-speed threats, not just bombers. Question doctrine when physics disagrees. On the Argentine side, younger pilots read after. Action reports about the Super Etendards missions. Small force, few missiles, clever use of terrain masking and tight fuel planning, they circle phrases. Always know your fuel window, one radar sweep, no more, don't get greedy, terrain and ocean curvature is your cloak and your enemy. In one such class, a young pilot raises a hand. Sir, he asks Puma no older, instructing instead of flying combato, you think it was the missiles that won that day, or you, Puma thinks. He sees again the numbers on his HUD, the waves below, the narrow angle where brightest radars might or might not see him. He hears the crackle of Neptune's strained radar, the hiss of his oxygen, the Exocet launch thump. He also sees the brightest decisions, EM, cone yellow, then Red Sea dart warming chaff delayed damage. Control fighting without water. It wasn't me alone, he says finally, and it wasn't the missile alone. It was a dance between their constraints and ours. We found a gap in their systems before they found a gap in ours. He looks at the class. But remember this, all the systems are designed and used by people. The doctrine is written by people. The decision to climb to 150 meters and turn a gave-un, that was mine. The decision to keep radars at reduced power, that was their captain's and his orders. He lets that settle. Technology sets the stage, he says. People decide how the play goes. Across an ocean, in a different classroom, Morgan says something similar to a new batch of warfare officers. Don't worship systems, he tells them. Know their envelopes, know their blind spots, and never assume the enemy hasn't read the same brochure. He pulls a slide of Sheffield on the day she sailed south, clean, intact, flag snapping. This ship had good men and decent systems, he says. But the enemy approached under our radar horizon, hugged the deck, stayed disciplined with their emissions, and fired within the ideal envelope of their weapon. We delayed going to full EM, cone red, because we prioritized hiding the group, all reasonable at the time. Together, those reasonable things opened a window. He clicks. The next slide is just Gracie. That window was about 2 minutes wide, he says. Sometimes war comes down to 2 minutes. Make them count. In Hartley's small flat, years later, there is a modest frame on the wall, a photograph of HMS Sheffield underway pre-war gliding through calmer waters. Another frame holds a black-end, white shot of the Board of Inquiry, rows of uniforms. On a shelf sits a small, polished fragment of twisted metal. It was recovered from the water near Sheffield's last position and later given to him. He picks it up sometimes, feeling the cooled scars where heat licked. He doesn't hate the men who fired the missile that sent it. He hates complacency, doctrine treated as gospel, designs divorced from new realities. But he also remembers the faces in the ops room, the kids hauling hoses, the lookouts who spotted the glint at the last second, the petty officers who stayed in hot corridors bridging compartments. With their bodies, the men, not the metal. He thinks of that when he hears news about new missiles faster, lower, smarter and new defenses touted as sure answers. Nothing is sure. Some nights he wakes to the echo of alarms and the crunch of impact. Most nights he sleeps. High over a different sea, years on, Puma rides jump seat in a trainer as a new pilot flies low over blue waves, practicing terrain masking. Keep it tight, Puma murmurs, eyes on the altimeter. Don't chase every bump. Trust your instruments, but peek outside enough not to hit a mast. The student nods, adjusting. They skim over a fishing boat. Men on deck look up, startled. Seeing faces from above again, Puma feels a familiar weight. He leans back, watching the horizon. Different sea, different era, same physics. Radar horizon is still 2 times square root of antenna height, whether the antenna is British, Argentine, or something else entirely. Fuel still burns at a set rate per minute. Missiles still have min range and max range. Fire mains still burst where steel tears. Only the names painted on hulls and fuselages change. Down below, in that South Atlantic patch of chart where the coordinates 50, 3 for south, 50, 650, 6 west are marked, there is no sign of Sheffield now. No oil slick remains. Waves have long since dispersed the last droplets. Fish swim where compartments once held air. Above, ships still pass sometimes, hulls silhouetted against gray skies. Their radars spin, their crews stand watch, their captains weigh in, cone levels and cap distances and row and fuels. Some of those captains once studied a case called the Sheffield incident at Staff College. Few know the names of the pilots who launched the missiles, or the petty officers who tried to fight the fires without water. But the story lies in procedures, in hardware, in wary glances at an empty radar scope when a gap in coverage yawns. On both sides of that old war, men who were there grow older. Some attend reunions, some avoid them. Some tell their children stories of long flights over cold seas and decisions made in 2 minutes that still echo decades later. Others say little, yet the lessons filter on like a quiet undercurrent beneath each new mission brief. Inside min range, at the edge of radar horizon, fuel at joker, can burn through chaff pattern, magazine boundary. Constraints that want change, people who must work within them. And somewhere, perhaps, an instructor asks a new generation what moment in that battle mattered most: the missile's design, the radar's blind spot, the captain's call, the pilot's discipline. The room debates. Some say technology, some say doctrine, some say luck. The truest answer, if one exists, is that it was all of these. Interlocking, cascading, just like it will be on the next day when someone flies low over a foreign sea, hugging the deck, thumb hovering over a switch that turns a weapon from inert weight into fate. What moment surprised you most? Did the constraints decide the battle or the people? Like, subscribe, and tell me which operation to cover next. Your comments shape the next mission.